A million points of soft light fill a plaza on a planet far from home. Families, children on shoulders, a song older than the empire rising into a lavender sky. Then the first row goes to one knee, the second, the third, like a wheat field falling in a wind. Somewhere on a high balcony, a princess with golden eyes grips a railing until her violet knuckles go white. Somewhere in the crowd, a brown-haired little girl turns her face toward the central platform. And there, on the stage, alone, a small human in a borrowed black coat raises his arms. A brass medallion catches the light at his throat, worn smooth by 12 years of being held too tight. 3 words on the back, pressed into his hand by a woman buried in the cold autumn earth of a world that no longer remembers her name. He draws a breath. He waits. The pumps under his coat begin to hum. Part 1. The cemetery sat at the edge of a city that no longer remembered its dead. Ethan Hollis walked the gravel path alone. 28 years old. A diplomat's badge pinned to his coat. Hands that used to heal, now folded behind his back. The wind cut sharp through the autumn morning. Leaves the color of rust scattered around his boots. He stopped at a small headstone, modest, plain. 3 words carved into the granite. Margaret Hollis, nurse. That was all she had wanted. Ethan knelt. The ground was cold beneath his knee. He set down the small bouquet he had carried from the city. White lilies, her favorite, always her favorite. Even when the world fell apart, she had kept a vase of them on the kitchen table. "Hi, Mom." His voice cracked. He hadn't expected that. He pressed his lips together. Tried again. "Hi, Mom. It's me." The wind didn't answer. It never did. But Ethan had learned somewhere between 16 and 28 that the dead listened in their own way. Through memory, through silence, through the small, stubborn things they left behind. He reached into his coat pocket. His fingers closed around something cold. A medallion. Brass. The size of a silver dollar. Worn smooth at the edges by 12 years of being held too tight. He turned it over in his palm. Read the engraving for the 1,000th time. Healing hands are a gift, not a burden. She had given it to him the night before the hospital sent her into the red zone. 12 years ago. The plague year. The one the textbooks now called the long winter. She had been a nurse. She had volunteered. Because that was who she was. Ethan had been 16. He had begged her not to go. She had kissed his forehead and pressed the medallion into his hand. "If anything happens," she had said, "remember this? Healing hands are a gift, Ethan, not a burden. Don't ever let anyone make you ashamed of caring." 3 weeks later, they brought her home in a sealed box. He had become a doctor. Of course he had. What else was he going to be? He had spent 5 years in school, 2 more in residency. He had treated kids in clinics that smelled like bleach and grief. He had been good at it. Very good. Until he wasn't. Until the day he lost a little girl named Hannah on a Tuesday morning. Pneumonia. He had done everything right. Every protocol. Every drug. And still she had slipped through his fingers like water. He had walked out of that hospital and never gone back. That had been 3 years ago. Now he was a diplomat. Junior ambassador, technically. Bottom of the ladder, even by Earth's modest standards. They had sent him because no one else wanted the job. They had sent him because, as his supervisor put it with a tight, careful smile, "You don't have anyone to lose anymore, Hollis." Ethan had not corrected him. He looked at the headstone now. He spoke quietly. "They're sending me to the stars, Mom." Saying it out loud made it real. The Solari, the big ones, the ones with the glowing skin. "I leave tomorrow. 3 months travel. Maybe more." He swallowed. "I don't know if I'll come back." The wind moved through the trees behind him. A crow called once and went quiet. Ethan closed his fingers around the medallion, pressed it to his chest. Just for a moment. "I'll wear it," he whispered. "Every day." He stood. His knee ached. He had gotten old in ways that had nothing to do with years. At the cemetery gate, he turned and looked back once. Just once. The lilies were already bending in the cold. He walked away. He did not see them again. The transport ship was named Andromeda's Promise, which was the kind of name only a committee could love. Ethan sat by the window for most of the journey. 3 months. 94 days. He counted them in cups of weak coffee and stale meal bars. The stars outside the window did not look the way he had imagined them. They did not twinkle. They did not move. They sat in the black like cold pinpricks, indifferent. Beautiful in the way a stranger's funeral is beautiful. From a distance. From far away. He read briefing documents. He learned the bows. He memorized the names of the imperial family. Emperor Soren. Tall. Ancient. Skin the color of deep ocean ice. Empress Vela. 6 eyes. 6. He had read that line 3 times before he believed it. And their only living daughter. Princess Leora, heir to the crystal throne. The previous 3 Earth ambassadors had failed. The first had been too aggressive. The second too apologetic. The third had simply stopped sending reports. No one talked about the third. Ethan stared at the dark glass, the medallion warm against his sternum. He had hung it on a length of cord that morning he left Earth, and not taken it off since. He whispered to it sometimes, like a fool, like a kid praying into a coat pocket. "Don't let me mess this up." The stars did not answer, but Ethan had stopped expecting them to. The Solari capital rose out of clouds like a story someone had told a child to make them sleep. Crystal towers, bridges of polished bone-white stone, gardens hanging in midair, suspended on something he could not name and dared not ask about. The whole city pulsed faintly. Not a sound, a feeling, as if the buildings themselves were breathing. The shuttle set down in a courtyard the size of 3 football fields. The doors opened. The first thing Ethan noticed was the light. Soft, gold, everywhere. It did not come from the sun. It came from the people. The honor guard stood in 2 rows. 12 Solari warriors, each one over 7 feet tall. Skin a luminescent blue that brightened and dimmed with their breath. They wore armor that looked carved from glass. Their eyes were yellow, like twin suns. Ethan stepped out. He was 5'10" in good boots. He felt very, very small. A man stepped forward, massive, a scar across one cheek. The yellow of his eyes was harder than the others, colder. He looked Ethan up and down, slowly, like a butcher checking the cut of meat. You are the human. It was not a question. Ethan Hollis. Ethan offered his hand. He knew it was wrong. He did it anyway. Pleased to meet you. The Solari did not take the hand. I am Commander Draxon, Captain of the Royal Guard. A pause. We were told to expect a diplomat. The implication sat in the air like smoke. Ethan lowered his hand. He smiled. Small. Polite. That would be me. Draxon's nostrils flared. Just slightly. He turned on his heel. Follow. So Ethan followed. The honor guard fell in around him, not as protection, as containment. He understood that much without being told. They walked through arched halls, past statues of figures whose stories he didn't know. The air smelled of something sweet, not flowers, not perfume, something older, like the smell of old churches, if churches had been built by aliens. Servants paused as he passed. Their eyes followed him, wide, curious, wary. He heard one of them whisper, "So small." He heard the other one answer, "They were ill, perhaps, as children." Ethan kept his face still. He had been ill as a child. They had no way of knowing that. They could not have known. But they were not wrong. The throne room took his breath, literally. He felt his lungs forget what they were for. The ceiling vaulted up into clouds, real clouds, indoor clouds. He looked up and saw birds wheeling in the highlight. He looked down and saw a floor of polished crystal that showed his own pale, tired face staring back at him. 3 figures sat on the dais. Emperor Soren, a mountain of a man with a beard like white fire, his face unreadable. Empress Vela, slender, regal. 6 eyes arranged in 2 careful rows of 3, all of them watching. All of them at once. Ethan felt every single one, and between them, on a smaller throne of her own. The princess. He had seen the briefing photos. They had not prepared him. Princess Leora. Her skin was the color of evening sky just before the stars come out. A deeper blue than her parents, almost violet at the edges. She was tall, not as tall as her father. Tall enough. Her hair was silver white and fell past her shoulders in a single loose braid, threaded with something that caught the light like dew. Her eyes were golden suns. She looked at him. He looked at her. Something in his chest did a small, stupid thing. He looked away. Get it together, Hollis. She was a princess. He was a diplomat. He was here to talk about trade routes and defense pacts. He was not here to notice the shape of her mouth. He bowed, the way the briefing book had said, right hand to heart, left hand at his side. Head down for 3 full seconds. He counted. 1, 2, 3. He straightened. The Emperor spoke. His voice was low, rolling, like distant thunder over a wide field. Earth has sent us a 4th. Ethan met his eyes. Yes, Your Majesty. The 4th in 5 years. Yes, Your Majesty. Silence. The Emperor's gaze did not move from his face. What makes you different from the 3 before you? Ethan felt the question land in his chest like a small stone. He could have said many things. He could have lied. He could have postured. He could have used the speech he had practiced in front of the bathroom mirror on the transport for 94 nights. He didn't, because something in him in that moment decided to be honest. "Nothing, Your Majesty," he said. "I'm not different. I'm just the one who's still here." A beat. Empress Vela's 6 eyes blinked, not all at once, in sequence, top to bottom, right side, then left. Emperor Soren's expression did not change, but Ethan saw for half a heartbeat the corner of Princess Leora's mouth twitch. Not a smile, the ghost of one. It was enough. He bowed again. He stepped back. The audience was over. He did not look at her again, but he felt her looking at him, all the way out. They gave him rooms in the diplomatic wing. Wing was a generous word. It was a tower. His. 12 floors. He had brought 1 duffel bag. He set the bag on the bed. He stood at the window for a long time. The city sprawled below him. The 2 moons rose, one pale, one pink. The light came in through the window like a question he didn't know how to answer. He took the medallion off and set it on the nightstand. He whispered, "I made it, Mom." Then quieter. Now what? The next morning, he found the garden. He had not been looking for it. He had been looking for the small dining hall the steward had mentioned, and he had taken the wrong corridor. And the corridor had ended in an archway, and the archway had opened onto something that stopped him cold. A garden, indoors, outdoors. He could not tell. The ceiling was a clear dome, and beyond it the morning sky was lavender. The garden itself was a riot of color he did not have names for. Trees with bark like glass, flowers the size of his face, a small stream that did not run on water, but on something that shimmered like liquid mercury and made a sound like wind chimes. In the middle of the garden, kneeling on a flat stone, was a woman. Her back was to him. She was wearing a simple gown the color of cream. Her hair was loose, long, silver white. She was talking to a flower. Ethan froze. He should leave. He should leave right now. He had wandered into something private, something he did not have the right to see. He turned to go. A branch caught his sleeve. The branch made a small clink, like a wind chime knocking against another. The woman turned. It was her. Of course it was her. Princess Leora's golden eyes met his across 30 feet of impossible garden. Ethan's mouth opened, closed, opened. "I'm sorry," he said. "I got lost." She tilted her head. "From where?" "From the dining hall. The dining hall is on the other side of the palace." "I know." A pause. She stood. Slowly, with the kind of grace that came not from training, but from being born somewhere very high up. She walked toward him. He held very still. She stopped 3 feet away. Up close, she was even harder to look at directly. Her skin had its own light. Not bright. Just steady. Like a banked fire. "Ambassador Hollis. Princess Leora. You are not what I expected." He almost laughed. "I get that a lot." "What did you expect?" He had not been ready for that. The question, the directness, the fact that she was talking to him at all in a garden with no guards in sight. He stopped. He started over. "I expected to be more terrified." She blinked. "And are you terrified?" "Yes." He looked at her, at the impossible garden, at the violet sky beyond the dome, at the fact that he was 26 light years from anyone who had ever known his name. "Yes, Your Highness." She did something unexpected. She smiled. Small, brief, real. "Good," she said. The other three were not. It was their first mistake. They talked for an hour. He could not say later how it happened. One moment she was a stranger. The next, she was asking him about Earth. And he was telling her. And she was listening with the particular intensity of someone who had been listened to less than she deserved her entire life. She asked about oceans. She had never seen one. She asked about rain, the kind that did not glow, the kind that just fell. She asked about his family. He hesitated. She saw the hesitation. "You don't have to answer," she said. "It's all right." He looked at the silver stream. He picked his words carefully. "My mother died when I was 16. There was a sickness. She was a nurse. She went to help. And your father left when I was small. I don't remember him." She nodded, slowly, as if filing this away. "My sister died when I was 8. He looked up. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. That doesn't matter." She studied his face. "No," she said quietly. "It doesn't." He had the strange feeling in that moment that two people who had been very alone for a very long time had just looked at each other across a garden and recognized something. He did not know what to do with that feeling, so he did the only thing he could. He bowed. He thanked her for her time. He found his way back through the impossible corridors to his tower. He sat on his bed for a long time without moving. He looked at the medallion on the nightstand. He whispered, "What did I just do?" The medallion did not answer, but he had the feeling for the first time in 3 years that something somewhere in the universe had heard him. The next morning, the message arrived. A standard diplomatic packet, encoded, Earth seal. He almost did not open it. He had expected nothing. He had been told to expect nothing. He opened it. He read it. He read it again. Then he sat very still in his chair and felt the floor of his life shift 2 inches to the left. The message was from Deputy Secretary Hollander, his direct supervisor on Earth. The tone was careful, diplomatic, the kind of letter a man writes when he wants plausible deniability. But the meaning was clear. Ambassador Hollis, please be advised that the department's current assessment of the Solari Alliance is one of cautious withdrawal. Your continued presence is appreciated, but your function is primarily symbolic. We do not anticipate substantive progress and are not seeking it. Please conduct yourself with appropriate decorum and limit any commitments. A graceful departure within 6 months is the preferred outcome. The department thanks you for your service. Ethan read it a 3rd time, then a 4th. His hands were shaking. A graceful departure, a symbolic function. He understood now. He understood why they had sent him. The 4th ambassador. The one with no family. The one who had walked out of medicine and never gone back. The one who would not embarrass anyone if he failed. Because they wanted him to fail. They had sent him here to lose. He stood. He paced. He sat down. He stood again. He thought about the previous 3 ambassadors. The aggressive one. The apologetic one. the one who simply stopped sending reports. He wondered suddenly whether that third one had figured it out. Whether he had read a letter like this and understood. Whether he had stopped sending reports because there was nothing left worth reporting. He went to the window, but he looked out at the city. The towers, the hanging gardens, a civilization that had been old when Earth was still figuring out the wheel. He thought about the princess in the garden, the way she had asked about rain. He thought about his mother. He thought very clearly. They sent me here to lose. And then he thought even more clearly, I'm not going to. He took the medallion off the nightstand. He pressed it to his lips. He hung it back around his neck. He whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. I think I'm about to disobey orders. The medallion was warm against his skin. He chose to take that as approval. The first formal council meeting was 3 days later. Ethan walked into the chamber in a borrowed Solari coat. Black. Severe. The closest thing to professional clothing the palace tailors had been able to fit him into without 3 weeks of alterations. The council was 12 members. Some were nobles. Some were generals. Some were merchants of unimaginable wealth. At the head of the table sat Lord Korath. Ethan had read about him on the transport. Old. Conservative. The voice of the faction that had argued for 30 years that the Solari Empire should have nothing to do with younger species. That alliances with the small ones diluted the bloodline. That the Empire was strong because it was pure. Korath's skin was so pale a blue it was almost gray. His eyes were dim, as if the fire that lit other Solari had gone out in him long ago. He watched Ethan walk in. He did not stand. He did not speak. He waited. Ethan bowed. He took his seat. Korath let the silence stretch for a long time. Then, finally, he spoke. Ambassador. My lord, you are quite young. Yes, my lord. On your world, are all ambassadors so young? No, my lord. Then why are you here? A heartbeat. Ethan met his eyes, steady. Because the other 3 couldn't make it work. Lord Korath smiled. It was not a kind smile. Indeed. Around the table, 12 faces watched. Some amused. Some bored. Some Ethan noticed slightly sympathetic. He filed those away. Korath spoke to the council, but his eyes did not leave Ethan's face. I will say plainly what others will not. The humans are a young species. They are clever. I do not deny this. But they are also impulsive, emotional. Their bodies fail. Their lives are short. They breed and die before our children learn to walk. To bind ourselves to such a species is to bind ourselves to a flame that burns out before the lamp is lit. He turned, slowly, to face Ethan directly. Tell me, Ambassador, why should the Empire care what Earth wants? Ethan felt 12 sets of eyes on him. He thought very fast about 100 answers. He chose the simplest. Because we'll be here in 100 years, my lord, and we'll remember who was kind to us and who wasn't. Lord Korath laughed. Once. Short. Sharp. A threat then. A promise. The table went quiet. Far down the long room, a door opened. Princess Leora stepped in. She was dressed in formal council robes. Silver. Embroidered with something that looked like constellations. She took her seat at her father's right hand. Her eyes met Ethan's. just once, just for a moment. He could not read what she was thinking, but he saw her father, Emperor Soren, look at his daughter, and then look at Ethan, and then say very quietly in a voice that filled the entire chamber, "Continue." So Ethan continued. He spoke for 40 minutes, about trade, about medicine, about the things humans had learned by being small and frightened and short-lived, about the things they could offer, not as supplicants, as partners. He did not raise his voice. He did not flinch. When he was done, Lord Korath was the first to speak. "Words," he said. "Pretty words." He stood. He gathered his robes. "We shall see, Ambassador Hollis, what your words are worth." He left. 3 other council members rose and left with him. 8 remained. Emperor Soren did not speak, but he held Ethan's gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded once. It was enough. That night the palace held a gala. It was, Ethan was told, a long-standing tradition, the autumn ceremony, marking the first frost on the high peaks. Music, dancing, wine that glowed. He almost did not go. He had spent the afternoon writing letters. To Earth. To Hollander. Letters he did not send. Letters that said things like, "I will not be your symbol." And the 3rd ambassador was right to go silent. And if you wanted a quiet failure, you should have sent a quiet man. He deleted them all. He sent nothing. He put on the formal coat the palace had provided. Dark blue. Fitted. He looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, a young man with tired eyes. The medallion glinted at his throat. He went down. The ballroom was a vision. Ceilings vaulted up into open sky. Stars. Real stars. He still did not know how the Solari did it. Music played from instruments he could not see. Couples moved across the floor in a slow, complex dance that involved a great deal of bowing and a small amount of touching. He stood at the edge. He took a glass of something pale gold. He did not drink it. He watched. He saw the Empress moving through the crowd, her 6 eyes greeting friends in 3 directions at once. He saw the Emperor in a deep conversation with 2 generals. He saw Lord Korath at the far end, surrounded by his faction, speaking in low tones. He did not see the princess, until he did. She had come in from a side door, alone. She was dressed in something the color of twilight. Her hair was pinned up. She wore a small circlet of pale stones. She crossed the room. She came directly to him. The entire ballroom noticed. Ethan felt the temperature of the air change. She stopped in front of him. "Ambassador." "Your Highness." "You stand alone." "I do." "That seems inefficient." He almost laughed. "I wasn't sure I was welcome on the floor." She tilted her head. "You are now." She held out her hand. He stared at it. 3 years ago, he had walked out of a hospital and sworn he would never let himself fail anyone again. 2 days ago, he had been told by his own government that he was a symbol of nothing. An hour ago, he had stood at the window of a tower 26 light years from home and wondered why he was alive at all. And now, a princess of a 1,000-year empire was holding out her hand to him, in front of everyone. He took it. Her skin was warm, smoother than human skin. It hummed faintly, like a held note. She led him onto the floor. The dance was slow. He did not know the steps. She walked him through them with the patient kindness of a teacher who had decided he was worth teaching. He stumbled twice. Both times she caught him. The second time she leaned close enough for him to hear her whisper, "Lord Korath is watching." "I know. My father is also watching." "I know. Don't fail this dance, Ambassador. It is a public statement." I gathered. She almost smiled. "You learn quickly." I had to. The music turned. The dance turned with it. He held her hand and tried to remember to breathe. He thought with a kind of distant clarity that he was in trouble, a very particular kind of trouble, the kind a man cannot diplomatically walk back from. It happened halfway through the second dance. A sound, a small, sharp sound, almost like a finger snapping. He felt Leora stiffen against his hand. He looked at her. Her golden eyes had gone wide. Her free hand rose, slowly, to her collarbone. A small dart. Slender, black, quivering against the violet of her skin. Time slowed. Ethan said, "No." The word came out before he could choose it. She looked at him. Her eyes were already glazing. She said, "Oh." Just that. "Oh." Then her knees buckled. He caught her. The ballroom erupted. He heard screaming. He heard shouted orders. He heard armored boots on the crystal floor. He heard very distantly Commander Draxon's voice roaring above the chaos. He did not look up. He went down to the floor with her. He cradled her head. He saw with the cold automatic clarity of the doctor he had once been, the dark veins beginning to spread from the dart wound. Black. Violet. Reaching down toward her heart. Poison. He knew poison. He did not know this poison. "Leora." His voice was steadier than he was. "Stay with me. Stay with me." Her eyelids fluttered. Empress Vela was on her knees on the other side of her daughter, all 6 eyes streaming. Her hands hovered. She did not know where to put them. The fastest medical mind in 3 empires, frozen. Commander Draxon seized Ethan by the shoulder. Get back, human." Ethan did not move. A small figure pushed through the crowd. White-haired, wiry, a scanner in her hand. Dr. Ivena Tessin, the imperial physician. She was already speaking before she reached them. "Krelvex venom. Krelvex. Make a hole. Make a hole." She knelt. She scanned. The scanner shrilled. She looked up. Her face was the face of a doctor who had just realized there was nothing she could do. "It is Vexari design. There is no antidote. There has never been an antidote." The ballroom went silent. Emperor Soren had reached them. The emperor of a 1,000-year empire stood over his daughter with his hands at his sides and his beard trembling. He said very softly, "How long?" Dr. Tessin said, "Minutes." The empress let out a sound that was not a word. Ethan felt the medallion against his sternum. He felt his mother's hand on his shoulder. 12 years ago, the night before she went into the red zone. He heard her voice. He heard it as clear as if she were standing behind him. "Healing hands are a gift, Ethan, not a burden." He looked at the princess in his arms. Her skin was dimming. He thought without thinking it, no. He pulled her closer. He pressed his palm flat against the dart wound. Commander Draxon's voice cracked above him. "What are you—" "Quiet," Ethan said. He did not know where the word came from. It was not his voice. It was his mother's. The room went quiet. He closed his eyes. He did not pray. He thought of her. His mother, sitting on the edge of his bed when he was 8 years old. When the fever had been so high, he had been dreaming with his eyes open. He thought of how she had not let go of his hand, how she had stayed. 30 nights. 30 nights without sleeping. He had been the one in 100 who lived. He had never understood why. He thought now in this throne room with a dying princess in his arms, that maybe this was why. Heat began to build in his palm. He felt it travel up his arm, into his chest, down his spine, out through every cell he had. Leora gasped. Her eyes snapped open, wide, golden. She stared up at him. Dr. Tesson's scanner screamed. She looked at it. She looked at him. She looked at it again. "Impossible," she breathed. The Emperor said, What is happening?" Dr. Tesson's voice came out hollow. "The toxin. It is leaving her body." A pause. "It is leaving her body and going into him." The room did not breathe. Ethan felt it. Cold, then hot, then cold again. Up his arm, into his blood. It tasted somehow in the back of his mouth like copper and ash. His vision swam. He gritted his teeth. He did not let go. The black veins on Leora's skin were retreating. Down her chest, out of her shoulders, back toward the dart wound. Like a tide pulled out by a moon he could not see. He felt them entering him. He felt his own veins darken under the skin of his wrist. Dr. Tesson scrambled around to his side. She scanned him. She made a small sound. Not professional, almost like a child. His blood is, his body is, it is breaking it down. Breaking it down. The Emperor's voice had a crack in it. Into what? Into nothing. Into common waste. His immune system treats it as a flu. As a flu, Your Majesty. Empress Vela whispered how. Dr. Tesson could not answer. Ethan could. He thought of a small boy in a bed. 30 nights of fever. A mother who did not let go. He thought of a planet where children had to survive 1 million microbial enemies before they were old enough to walk. He thought because we evolved in the dirt. Because we had to. He did not say any of this. He could not say any of this. His teeth were chattering. He looked down at Leora. The light was returning to her skin. Slowly, like a sunrise. She stared up at him. Her hand rose, trembling. She pressed it flat against his cheek. "You!" she whispered. "Yeah," he managed. "Me. You are pulling it into yourself. Looks like it. Stop. Can't. You will die." "Maybe." Her eyes filled. "You will die for me." He almost laughed. He didn't have the strength. "Princess," he said through clenched teeth. "I have been dying for 3 years. This is just the first time it's been for something." Her hand pressed harder against his cheek. A single tear slid down her temple into her hair. Around them, The Solari Empire watched in absolute silence as a small human in a borrowed coat held their dying princess and refused to let go. The last of the poison left her body in a long, shuddering exhale. Ethan felt it settle into him. Cold, heavy. He could feel his own cells beginning to swarm it. Strange, hungry, like a body remembering an old fight. He kept his hand on the dart wound until the skin under it had closed. Smooth, whole. He blinked. He had not realized that would happen. Leora drew a breath. A real one. Her chest rose. She was alive. She was alive. The room exhaled. Then Ethan's vision tunneled. He felt himself tip sideways. Someone caught him. Strong arms. He heard Commander Draxon swear in a language he did not understand. He heard the Emperor's voice from very far away. Get him to the Imperial Wing. The Imperial Wing, not the diplomatic tower. He heard the Empress. Ivenna! Ivenna, save him! He heard Dr. Tessin. I will try. I have never tried this. I do not know what he is. And then just before everything went dark, he heard one more voice. A whisper, close to his ear. Trembling. Fierce. Don't you dare, Leora said. Don't you dare leave me. Not now. Not when I have just found you. He smiled. He thought he smiled. He could not be sure. He thought, "Hi, Mom." Then the dark folded over him. He did not see what happened next, but it happened. Commander Draxon, his face white, knelt over the body of the assassin. The assassin had been killed by a Royal Guard arrow before the ballroom had fully understood what was happening. His body lay crumpled in a service alcove, dressed in dark clothes, a Vexari throat wrap. Draxon turned the body over. He froze. He reached down with one massive blue hand. He took hold of the throat wrap. He pulled. It came away. Underneath was not the gray-green skin of a Vexari assassin. Underneath was pale, faintly luminescent, Solari skin. Draxon stared. He looked at the dead man's face. The eyes were filmed over, but they were yellow. Solari yellow. Draxon said one word, quietly, to himself. No. Then louder to the guards behind him. Seal the palace. Seal it now. No one leaves. No one. This was not the Vexari. A pause. This was one of ours. Ethan woke in white sheets. He did not know where he was. He blinked at a ceiling he did not recognize. Soft light. Quiet. He could hear somewhere far away a fountain. His chest hurt. His head hurt. His mouth tasted like ash. He turned his head. Princess Leora was sitting in a chair beside his bed. She had not slept. He could see that. Her hair was loose. Her eyes were rimmed in something darker than violet. She was holding his hand. He looked at their hands together. His pale. Hers blue-violet. Her thumb stroking slowly across the back of his knuckles. He did not have the strength to pull away. He did not want to. She saw his eyes open. She did not speak for a long moment. Then, very quietly, she said, "You should not have done that." "I know." "Why did you?" He thought about it, about all the answers he could give. He gave the only true one. My mother told me healing hands were a gift. I think she meant it literally. Her eyes filled. She lifted his hand. She pressed his knuckles to her forehead. She held them there for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was steady, steadier than her eyes. Someone in this palace tried to kill me, Ambassador Hollis. He nodded. He had figured. The assassin was Solari. He nodded again. He had not figured, but he was not surprised. You saved my life. Her thumb moved across his knuckles. Now I am going to find out who wanted me dead. Okay. And when I do, her golden eyes met his. I am going to need someone beside me who is not afraid to disobey. He looked at her. 3 years ago, he had walked out of a hospital and sworn he was done. He had been wrong. He had been so wrong. He took a breath. It hurt. He took it anyway. Princess Leora. Yes, Ambassador. I'm not afraid. She smiled. Small. Fierce. The first real smile he had ever seen on her face. She did not let go of his hand. He did not ask her to. Outside the window, the sky was the color of held breath. And in a dark wing of the palace, a man Ethan had not yet met turned slowly to a window of his own. The man was younger than Lord Korath. Much younger. He had the smooth face of a noble who had not yet been outwitted by time. A gold ring on his thumb. Pale, gray-blue eyes. He had heard the news. He had heard who had survived. He had heard the impossible. The human. He had absorbed Krelvek's venom. The man's hand tightened on the windowsill until his pale knuckles went white. He whispered to no one in particular. So, you are not so easily disposed of, are you, little physician? He smiled. It was not a kind smile. He turned from the window. He had work to do. Part 2. Recovery is a strange country. Ethan learned this slowly, over days, the kind of days that bled into each other without ceremony. He woke. He slept. He woke again. The light through the high window changed color and changed back. The fountain in the courtyard never stopped. His body did not feel like his body. It felt like something that had been borrowed and then returned, slightly rearranged. He could lift his hand. He could not lift his head off the pillow without effort. He could speak. He could not speak for long. He learned the rhythm of the imperial wing by sound. The soft step of servants in cloth slippers, the clink of silver trays, the distant formal change of the guard. 3 times a day. A bell that rang somewhere very high up and very far away. He learned the rhythm of his own body, too. The poison had left him, but it had taken something. Or perhaps it had given him something. He could not yet tell which. Dr. Ivana Tessin came every morning. She was thin and silver-haired, and walked with the impatience of a woman who had spent 600 years being right about everything. She would set her scanner on the bedside table. She would press cold fingers to his wrist. She would scowl at the readings. She would say, She would not say what she was thinking. He did not ask. He did not ask because some part of him, the doctor part, the small voice that had once known the names of every bone in the body, suspected he already knew. Something in him had changed. Something was still changing. On the 4th morning, the princess came. She had come every day. He had been only half awake for most of it. He remembered her hand on his. He remembered her voice. He remembered her reading to him once in a low, even tone from a book in a language he did not know. But on the fourth morning he was awake. He was awake, and he was sitting up, propped against pillows. And he had been told by a servant in a tone of great reverence that Princess Leora would be visiting at the 10th bell. He had spent the hour before the 10th bell trying to pretend he was not nervous. He had failed. He had asked the servant for a comb. The servant had brought one. He had used it. He felt ridiculous. The doors opened. She came in alone. No guards. No attendants. She was wearing something simple. Pale gray. The color of mourning doves at home. Her hair was down. She was carrying a small wooden tray. On the tray was a teapot. 2 cups. She set it on the table beside his bed. She said, "Good morning, Ambassador Hollis." He said, "Good morning, Your Highness." She said, "I have decided to call you Ethan." He blinked. "Okay. You may call me Leora. In private." In private. She poured the tea. He watched her hands. They were steady, steadier than his had been in 3 years. She handed him a cup. He took it. He sipped. It tasted like something between mint and rain. She sat beside the bed, not in the chair, on the edge of the bed itself, close enough that the hem of her gray gown touched his blanket. She did not look at him. She looked at her own cup. She said, "I have been thinking about what I would say to you for 4 days." He waited. "I rehearsed many things." He waited. "I rehearsed thank you. I rehearsed I am sorry. I rehearsed I do not know what you are." He almost smiled. All 3 would have been fine. She looked up. Her golden eyes met his. "None of them are what I came to say." His chest went tight in a way that had nothing to do with poison. She set down her cup. She said very quietly, "I came to say that I have not stopped seeing your face. Since that night, I close my eyes, and I see your face, and I do not know what to do with that." He could not speak. She did not seem to want him to. She took the cup from his hand and set it next to her own. Then she did something very small. Something very simple. Something that was not, by the standards of her empire, anywhere near the boldest thing a princess could do. She reached out and took his hand. She held it in both of hers. She lowered her forehead to his knuckles. She did not speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was barely a whisper. My mother used to tell me there was an old saying among our people. A child of stardust will touch the royal house, and 2 bloods will become one. He whispered back. That's a heavy story. Yes. You think that's me? I think. She lifted her face. Her eyes were wet. I think I am very tired of being lonely, Ethan Hollis. His heart, which had been doing strange things since the first time he had seen her in that garden, broke very quietly into a shape it had not been before. He turned his hand in hers. He laced his fingers between her fingers. He said, "Me too." She closed her eyes. She did not move for a long time. The Empress came that afternoon. He had not expected that. He was alone when she arrived. He was sitting up. He was reading. A small book Leora had left for him. Solari poetry, translated into standard. He did not understand most of it. He was trying anyway. The doors opened. Empress Vela stepped through. He moved to rise. She raised one hand. Sit. Please. He sat. She was, he realized for the first time, not as tall as he had thought. She had seemed enormous on the throne. Here, in this quiet room in a soft blue robe, with her silver hair gathered at her neck, she was just a woman. Just a mother. She crossed to the chair beside his bed. She sat down. Her 6 eyes, arranged in 2 careful rows, blinked in sequence. Top to bottom, the way Solari did when they were preparing to say something difficult. He waited. She did not look at his face. She looked at his hand, the one that had touched her daughter's dying chest and brought her back. She said, "My eldest daughter died when she was very young." He did not interrupt. Her name was Vela, after me. She was the heir before Leora. She was sick. She was sick from the day she was born. We were told she would not live past her 10th birthday. The royal physicians, the imperial archives, every medicine in the empire could not save her. She paused. She breathed. She died when she was 9. He whispered, "I'm so sorry." It was almost 140 years ago, Ambassador Hollis. That doesn't matter. She looked at him, all 6 eyes, for the first time. "No," she said. "It does not." She reached into her robe. She took out something small. A locket. Silver. Older than anything he had ever held. She opened it. Inside was a tiny portrait. A child. Pale violet skin. Wide golden eyes. Smiling. Ethan looked. He looked away. He could not look long. "I have carried her with me for 140 years, Empress Vela said. "I have carried the question of why. Why no one could save her. Why we who built the towers of this city, who command the engines of the stars, could not save my child." She closed the locket. She turned to him, and then she said, 4 days ago, I watched a young man from a small, struggling world hold my 2nd daughter in his arms and pull death out of her with nothing but his hands." Her voice broke. He felt his own eyes sting. She reached across the bed. She took his hand, the same way Leora had. Both of her hands closed around his. "I do not know what you are, Ethan Hollis. I'm just... No." Her grip tightened. "You will let me finish." He fell silent. "I do not know what you are, but I know this. You did for my daughter what I could not do for my daughter, and I will spend the rest of my long life remembering that." She pressed his hand to her heart. The Solari gesture. He had read about it in the briefings. He had never seen it given outside the imperial family. He sat very still. He did not breathe. She held his hand to her heart for a long moment. Then she let go. She stood. She walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the frame. "Be careful with my Leora ambassador." He swallowed. "I will. She is stronger than she knows. She is also more breakable than she knows. Both things are true." "Yes, ma'am." She glanced back. For the first time, all 6 of her eyes smiled. "And one more thing. Yes. My husband does not yet say this, but he will. So I will say it now so you are prepared." She paused. "My family does not forget what you did. Not in this generation. Not in the next. Not ever." She went. The door closed behind her. Ethan sat very still in the white sheets for a long time. He looked down at his own hand, pale, ordinary, slightly trembling. He thought Mom. He did not know what else to think. He told her about it that night, about being 8 years old. He had not told anyone in 20 years. He had not even told the woman he had almost married back when he was 24 and stupid and thought he could keep all the wounds covered. But he told Leora. She had come back at the 10th bell, with the tea, with the same gray gown. He had begun to understand that this was going to be their pattern, that the 10th bell would be theirs. He told her. He said I was 8. He said there was a sickness in our city. Most kids who got it died. I got it. He said, my mother sat by my bed for 30 nights. She didn't sleep. She didn't go home. She didn't change her clothes. The doctors told her there was nothing to do. She did it anyway. He said, I lived. I don't know why. They told her it was a 1 in 100 chance. He said, I asked her once, when I was older. I asked her why she stayed. She said because love is the only medicine I have, and I refuse to leave the bottle unopened. His throat closed on the words. He did not realize he was crying until Leora's hand was on his face. She wiped a tear from his cheek with her thumb. She said, Ethan. He said, I think that's why. He said, I think that's why my body does what it does. Because she stayed. Because she didn't leave the bottle unopened. Because she taught my cells when I was 8 years old what fighting was. He said, I think I survived for a reason, and I never knew what it was, until you. She did not speak. She did the thing the Empress had done. She took his hand. She pressed it flat against the front of her gown, against her heart. She held it there. She said, then thank her for me, the next time you talk to her. He laughed. He had not expected to laugh. He said, I will. He said, I do. The investigation began the morning after. Commander Draxon came alone. He stood at the foot of the bed. He did not sit. Solari warriors did not sit unless ordered. He said, Ambassador, I will be brief. He said, the assassin was Solari. I told you this on the night. He said, we have identified him. He was a junior officer of the household guard. He had served the imperial family for 40 years. He said, his family is being questioned. His communications are being unspooled. We are working through every credit chip he has touched in the last 6 months. He paused. He said, I tell you this because the princess has asked me to. He paused again. He said, and because I owe you a debt I will not be able to repay in this lifetime. Ethan blinked. Commander. Yes, Ambassador. You don't owe me anything. Draxon's jaw worked. Once. Twice. He said, I commanded the guard that night. He said, she is my princess. She has been my princess since the day she was born. I held her on my shoulders when she was 6 years old. He said, I should have died before she did. Ethan looked at him, at the scar across his cheek, at the yellow eyes that were for the first time not cold. He said, then we both did our jobs, Commander. Draxon did not answer for a long moment. Then he stepped forward. Once. He raised his right hand. He placed it formally on Ethan's shoulder. The Solari oath gesture. He said, You have my blade, Ambassador Hollis, from this day until my last." Ethan did not know how to answer. He nodded, just once. Draxon left. Ethan lay back against the pillows. He thought, what is happening to my life? He could not answer himself. He was beginning to suspect he was not supposed to. The second attack came 11 days later. It came during a children's blessing. Ethan had not been there. He had still been confined to the Imperial wing. Dr. Tesson was strict. Bed rest, light food, no exertion, no politics. So he heard about it the way the rest of the palace did. By alarm. He was on his feet before the second bell. He should not have been on his feet. He was on his feet anyway. He grabbed a robe. He grabbed the medallion. He went. The corridors were chaos. Servants running. Guards in formation. The high, pure, clear tone of the emergency bells echoing through every crystal hall, like the sound of breaking glass made musical. He stopped a passing officer. "Where?" "The Hall of Lesser Stars, sir. The children's blessing." "What happened?" "A device. A gas. They. The children. Many of them." "Sir, please return to your quarters." He did not hear the rest. He was already running. He should not have been running. He did it anyway. The Hall of Lesser Stars was a circular room with a high domed ceiling. On any other day, it would have been beautiful. It was today a battlefield. Children lay on the floor. Solari children. Small, pale violet. None of them older than maybe 12. Some were already still. Some were twitching. Their mothers and nurses knelt over them. Some were screaming. Some were not making any sound at all. Which was worse. Ethan's doctor brain switched on like a light. He counted. 43 children. He found Dr. Tesson in the center of the hall. She was pale. Pale, even for a Solari. Her scanner was in her hand. She was on her knees beside a small girl whose lips had begun to go gray. "Ivana." She turned. Her eyes were wide. "Ambassador, you should not." "What is it?" "Same toxin. Diluted. Aerosol. Released through the ceremonial incense burners." "How many?" 43 exposed. 12 in critical. We do not have time. We do not have an antidote. There is no antidote. I told you we do not have. He grabbed her wrist. "Ivana." "Yes. Take my blood." She blinked. "What?" "Take my blood. All of it. Whatever you need. Take it now. Make a serum. That is not how. We do not know if your immune profile will. There has been no time to study. We do not." "Ivana." He squeezed her wrist. "We don't have time to know. We have time to try. Take it. Now." She stared at him. She said, "You will not survive this." He said, "Then I won't survive this." He said, "Take it, doctor." A small girl 2 feet away made a sound. A small, wet sound. Like a leaking pipe. Ivana Tesson was a doctor for 600 years. She had not become a doctor because she froze. She moved. He did not remember most of it. He remembered sitting on the floor of the Hall of Lesser Stars, with his sleeve rolled up. He remembered the needle. He remembered Ivana's hands. He remembered the heat that came back into his veins as his own immune system, by then awake, began to manufacture something that should have taken months in a lab. He remembered Leora's hand on his neck. He had not even noticed her arrive. He remembered the little girl who was closest to him. She had brown hair, which was unusual for Solari. Brown like his own. Almost human. She must have had some old distant strain. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were gray. Ivana injected her first. He watched. He watched the color come back. He watched her chest rise. He watched her eyes flutter open. She was 4, maybe 5. Hard to tell with Solari. She looked at him. Her eyes were like new copper coins. She did not recognize him. She did not know what he was. She said, "Mister." He said, "Hi." She said, "Mister, are you brown?" He laughed. He could not help it. He laughed. With his sleeve still rolled up, and a needle still in his arm, and his vision swimming, and his ears beginning to ring. He said, "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm brown." She said, "I like brown." She lifted her hand. She patted his cheek. She said, "You are pretty, Mr. Brown." He did not cry. Doctors did not cry. He cried. He cried while Leora's hand on his neck tightened. He cried while Ivana's needle moved on to the next child. And the next. And the next. He cried because he had walked out of a hospital 3 years ago and sworn he was done with this. And he had been wrong about everything. They saved all 43 children. He passed out somewhere around the 30th. He woke up back in the Imperial wing. Leora was sitting on the bed beside him. Not in the chair. On the bed. She was holding his hand. Her other hand was pressed flat over his heart. She was watching the rise and fall of his chest, as if it was the only thing in the universe that interested her. He whispered, "How many?" "All of them," she said. "All of them. Ethan. Every one of them. You saved every one of them." He closed his eyes. He felt her tears on his chest before he felt them on his face. 3 days later, Lord Korath called for his arrest. He did it in open council. He did it with a face that pretended to be grave, but was not grave. He did it with the calm precision of a man who had been waiting for exactly this opportunity for 6 weeks. He stood. He smoothed his robes. He spoke. "My lords and ladies, my lords and ladies, we have all seen the impossible. We have all seen this human. This small, frail, very persuasive human. We have seen him pull death from our princess. We have seen him grow new medicine from his own veins. We have seen him do with his body what our science could not. And I ask you now, what manner of being does this?" A pause. "What manner of being arrives among us unknown, untested in the company of a fading empire, and within 60 days has wormed his way into the heart of our imperial family? What manner of being makes a princess weep in public when he bleeds? What manner of being makes an empress press her heart to his hand? This is not medicine, my lords and ladies. This is not science. This is sorcery. This is biological enchantment. This is a calculated foreign infiltration of the royal bloodline." He paused. "Let it land. I move, for the protection of the imperial family and the empire, that the human be confined, pending full investigation of his nature, his origins, and his purposes." The council chamber was silent. Ethan, watching from a side gallery where he had been brought against Dr. Tesson's wishes, felt his stomach drop into his shoes. Leora was on her feet before he was. She said, "My Lord Korath, you go too far." Korath turned. Slowly. He smiled. "Princess, I would expect nothing else. He has bewitched you. He has saved me. Has he? Lord Korath, forgive me, Highness, but the bewitched cannot vouch for the witch." The Emperor said one word, soft, heavy. Korath. But it was not enough. The vote was called. It was not unanimous, but it was not even close either. By a margin of 9-3, Lord Korath's motion passed. Ethan was arrested in the council chamber, in front of Leora. The last thing he saw as the guards turned him toward the door was her face. She was not crying. She was furious. She mouthed 3 words at him across the chamber. "I will fix this." He did not have time to answer. He did not have the strength to answer. He let himself be led away. The cell was clean. That surprised him. He had been ready for worse. He had been ready for chains, for stone, for the kinds of dungeons he had read about as a boy. Instead, they gave him a small white room, a bed, a table, a window high up the wall, a grate of pale blue light across the floor. It was the kind of room a hospital might keep for a patient nobody knew what to do with. He sat on the bed. He held the medallion in his hands. He turned it over. Healing hands are a gift, not a burden. He thought, "I think the burden part is caught up with the gift part, Mom." He pressed the medallion to his lips. He prayed. He had not prayed in 12 years. Not really. He had said the words. He had even said them at his mother's grave. But he had said them the way you say words at a grave, without expecting them to land anywhere. This time he prayed the way she had taught him when he was small. He prayed the way she had prayed beside his bed when he was 8 years old. He did not know what he was praying to. He prayed anyway. He whispered, "I don't know what to do." The medallion was warm in his palm. He whispered, "Tell me what to do." There was no answer. Of course there was no answer. He held the medallion against his chest, and he closed his eyes, and he did not sleep. Leora came 2 nights later. She came alone. She came in a hooded cloak. She came past guards who he later learned owed her favors going back decades. She came past doors that should not have opened. She came in the way royal daughters came when they decided that the rules had quit being interesting. He woke to her voice at the door of the cell. "Ethan." He sat up so fast his vision swam. "Leora." "Shh." He crossed to the bars. She pulled back her hood. Her eyes were red. She did not look like a princess. She looked like a woman who had not slept for a week. Which was he realized what she was. She reached through the bars. He took her hand. She pressed her forehead to the iron between them. She said, "I know who it is." He said, "Who?" She did not answer at first. She took a long breath. She said, "It is Rylan." He blinked. The name was familiar. The briefings. Months ago. On the transport. He pulled it up. Prince Rylan, heir of a minor house. He had been betrothed to Leora once. The match had been called off 2 years ago. Quietly. No one talked about it. He had been a footnote. He was not a footnote anymore. Ethan said, your ex-fiancé. Yes. Are you sure? Yevena traced the credit chips. They led back through 3 shells. They lead to him. The aerosol device. The original assassin. The vote in council. He has been moving Korath like a piece on a board, and Korath thinks he is the one moving. Her voice did not shake. He looked at her. He saw the price she was paying, not just for the discovery, but for what it meant. About a man she had once almost married. A man she had once trusted enough to consider sharing her life with. He said very gently, "Leora, are you all right?" She closed her eyes. A single tear slid down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. She said, "I am not all right." She said, "I trusted him. Not deeply, but I trusted him. I let him sit at my table. I let him laugh in my mother's garden. I broke the engagement, yes. He took it badly, yes. But I did not think he would. I did not think any person I had once touched would." She stopped. She breathed. She said, "How does a person become this Ethan?" He looked at her through the bars. He had no idea how to answer that. He had been a doctor. He had been at bedsides. He had heard women say that exact sentence about husbands who hit them, and brothers who stole from them, and mothers who walked away when they were 5. There was no answer. He gave her the only one he had. He said, "Leora, listen to me." He said, "I know it hurts. I know it feels like a wound that won't close." He said, "But you have a choice now." She opened her eyes. He said, "You can let what he did to you make you smaller, or you can let it teach you who you are not." She did not speak. He pressed on. "My mother used to say, forgiveness is not for the person who hurt you. It is for the person who has to keep walking afterward." He said, "It is for you." He said, "Not yet. You don't have to forgive him yet. Maybe not ever. But don't let what he did make you cold. Don't let it make you somebody you have to live with later and not recognize." She stared at him through the bars. She did not move for a long time. Then she lifted his hand. She kissed his knuckles. She said, "I am going to get you out of this cell, Ethan Hollis." He said, "I know." She said, "And then we are going to stop him together." He said, "I know." She pressed her forehead to the bars one more time. She left. He sat on the bed. He held the medallion. He thought, "Mom, I think I love her." The medallion was warm. He chose to take that as approval. The trial was a sham. Leora made sure of that. She and Dr. Tesson brought forward 4 days of forensic evidence. Credit trails. Communications. Servants who had seen Rylan in places he should not have been. A timeline that mapped every poisoning back to a single hand. Lord Korath shouted. Lord Korath denied. Lord Korath called the evidence forged. Lord Korath was by the end of the 3rd hour beginning to sweat. Because Lord Korath had not known. He had been used. He had thought he was the one moving the pieces. The Emperor watched Korath sweat with the cold dispassion of a man who had ruled for 200 years and recognized weakness when he saw it. By the end of the day, the council had voted again. By a margin of 11-1, the arrest of Ethan Hollis was rescinded. By a margin of 12-0, An imperial warrant was issued for Prince Rylan. Lord Korath was not arrested. He was not, however, ever again invited to sit at the head of the table. Ethan walked out of the cell on the arm of Princess Leora. He was thinner than he had been when he walked in. He was paler. His hands trembled. He could not hide it. Leora saw it. She did not comment. She walked him through the long crystal corridor to the imperial wing. Slowly, letting him set the pace. She did not let go of his hand. When they reached his door, she did not let him go in alone. She came in with him. She closed the door behind her. She turned to him. She said, "Ethan." He said, "Yeah." She said, "I have something to tell you, and I do not want you to interrupt me until I am finished. Do you understand?" He nodded. She said, "Ivana has been studying you since the attack on the children. She has run every test our science is capable of. She has run some tests our science is not capable of, that she invented last week because you required them." He waited. She said, "She believes the toxin you absorbed at the gala was the first dose. She believes the toxin you absorbed from the aerosol was the second. Each dose your body processed. Each dose your body learned from." She said, "She believes you are now carrying, in the tissue of your heart, and your liver, and your bones, a long-term residue of Krelvek's venom." He blinked. He said, "Okay." She said, "It is slowly, killing you." The room went very quiet. He sat down on the bed. He had to. He said, "How long?" She said, "Months. A year if you are careful. Maybe 2. He said, "Oh." She said, "There is more." He looked up. She said, "We have intercepted communications between Rylan and the Vexari." She said, "They are planning a final attack, the Millennium Festival, 3 weeks from today. It is the largest gathering in the Empire's history. Every noble, every general, 1,000,000 citizens in the Imperial Plaza." She said, "They have built a delivery system. The toxin will be released into the atmosphere. The casualty estimate is around 400,000. He stared at her. He said, 400,000. She said, "Yes." He closed his eyes. He thought of 43 children in the Hall of Lesser Stars. He thought of the little girl with brown hair. "Mister, are you brown?" He multiplied by 10,000. He could not. He could not multiply by 10,000. He opened his eyes. He said, "Ivana can make a serum from my blood. We did it for the children. We can do it again." Leora did not speak. He said, "Right. Ivana can." Leora said, "Ethan." He stopped. She knelt in front of him. She took both of his hands. She said, "Ivana can, but the dose required to immunize 400,000 people from your blood in 3 weeks would require." She did not finish. He finished for her, all of it. She nodded. Her eyes filled. She said, "All of it, Ethan. There is no version of this where you survive." He did not speak. He did not have to. He had known. From the moment she had said Millennium Festival, he had known. He had been a doctor. He had read the chapter on triage when he was 21. The math in the end was the math. He looked at her. He said, "Okay." She said, "Ethan, no." He said, "Leora, listen." He cupped her face. His hand was thinner than it had been a month ago. His knuckles stood out, but it was his hand. It was the hand his mother had told was a gift. He said, "I survived a sickness that killed every other kid in my city when I was 8. I have wondered every day since I was 16 why." He said, "I think I finally know." She started to cry. He kept his hand on her face. He thumbed her tears away. He said, "Don't." She said, "I will." He said, "Leora." He said, "I have been alone for a very long time. 3 weeks ago, I did not know there was anyone in the universe who would hold my hand." He said, "If I get 3 weeks with you, 3 weeks, to do something that matters, then this whole long, lonely, ridiculous life will have been worth it." She put both her hands on the front of his shirt. She gathered fistfuls of the fabric. She pressed her forehead to his. She said, "Ethan Hollis, I am furious with you." He smiled. He said, "I know." She said, "I am so furious." He said, "I know." She said, "I want 20 years with you, not 3 weeks." He said, "I know." She said, "I want 50. He said, "I know." She said, "I want 100. He said, "Leora." She lifted her face. He said, "I will give you everything I have." She closed her eyes. She nodded. A long moment. Then she opened her eyes. She placed her right hand, flat, over his heart. She said in a voice that did not shake, in the old language of my people, when a person is willing to share, not just a life, but a death, they make this vow, with this gesture. Once, he felt her hand, warm, steady. She said, "I make it to you." He looked at her. He had been a doctor. He had been a son. He had been a junior diplomat for an empire that did not believe in him. In that small room, with 3 weeks to live, he became for the first time a man who was loved. He raised his own hand. He placed it, flat, over her heart. He said, "If the sky lets us live past the festival," he said, "I will marry you, Leora of the Solari, in a small garden, with nobody watching but the lilies." She breathed. She said, "If the sky lets us live past the festival, Ethan Hollis, I will hold you to that." He said, "Deal." She laughed. Wet. Broken. Real. She said, "Deal." She kissed him. It was their first kiss. It was very gentle. It tasted somehow like mint and rain. He did not sleep that night. He sat at the window. He watched the 2 moons of the Solari Empire rise. One pale, one pink. He watched them climb the sky. He thought of his mother. He thought of 43 children. He thought of 400,000. He thought of the brown-haired little girl. He thought of his wife-to-be. He took the medallion off. He held it in his palm. Healing hands are a gift, not a burden. He whispered into the quiet. "Mom," he whispered, "I think I finally understand what you meant." He closed his fist around the medallion. He said, "I am not afraid." For the first time in 12 years, it was true. In a tower across the city, A man with pale gray-blue eyes and a gold ring on his thumb stood at his own window. He smiled. He thought 3 more weeks. He thought, let the little human do his little tricks. He thought he will not be able to drink the sky. Prince Ryland turned from the window. He had a festival to prepare for. Part 3. 3 weeks went by the way the last weeks of a life go. Slow in the mornings, fast in the afternoons. Slowest of all in the small hours when Ethan would wake and reach for the woman beside him and find her already awake, already watching him, already counting. They did not speak much in those hours. There was nothing to say. There was everything to say. So they held hands instead. They held hands the way people who have agreed to a price hold hands. Carefully, like they were carrying water across a long room. Like spilling any of it would be the end of the world. Dr. Ivana Tessin worked through the nights. She set up a small clinic off the Imperial Wing. She drew his blood every morning. She wept once, quietly, in a corner, when she thought he could not see her. She did not weep again. She built the serum. She built the delivery system. She tested. She refined. She tested again. She did not sleep. When the Empress brought her broth one night at the second bell, Ivana looked up. Her silver hair was wild. Her eyes were bloodshot. She held the cup of broth and stared at it, and did not drink it. She said, 600 years. The Empress said, yes, Ivana. Ivana said, I have been a physician for 600 years. I have served 3 emperors. I have watched 1,000 children die that I could not save. She said, I will save 400,000 on the back of one human boy. She drank the broth. She went back to work. The night before the festival, Ethan sat in the garden where he had first met Leora. She was beside him, on the stone bench, her hand in his thumb moving slowly over her knuckles. The garden was the same, the branches like glass, the mercury stream, the dome of lavender sky overhead. He was not the same. He had lost weight. He had lost color. His cheeks had hollowed in ways he could not look at in a mirror without seeing his mother's face the week before she died. He had stopped looking in mirrors. Leora had not. She looked at him every morning the way a woman memorizes a place she will not see again. She said, Are you afraid? He said, No. She said, Liar. He laughed. It was a small laugh. It hurt his ribs. He laughed anyway. He said, A little. She said, Of dying. He said, Of not getting to come back to this bench. She closed her eyes. She said, Ethan. He said, Yeah. She said, If. She stopped. She started again. She said, If something goes wrong tomorrow. He waited. She said, If the math is off. If your body fails before the dispersal completes. If the serum is not stable. If. He squeezed her hand. He said, Leora. He said, If something goes wrong tomorrow, you will live, and you will rule, and you will be kind. She opened her eyes. He said, That is all I ask. She did not speak. He said, Promise me that. She said, Ethan. He said, Promise me. She closed her eyes again. A tear slid down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. She said, I promise. He lifted her hand. He kissed her knuckles. He said, "Then I'm not afraid." It was not entirely true, but it was true enough. The plaza of the Millennium Festival held 1,000,000 people. 1,000,000. Ethan had read the number. He had not understood the number. He understood it now, standing on a high balcony, watching them stream into the plaza like rivers feeding a sea. Families, children on shoulders, old couples in silver, soldiers in their dress armor, merchants in their guild colors, pale violet skin in 1,000 shades, 1,000,000 points of soft light, a whole civilization in one place. Music played. It was not a single song. It was 100, from 100 different regions, carried by 100 different bands, all of them playing at once, all of them somehow blending in a sound that was either heartbreaking or beautiful, or both. Ethan stood at the railing. He wore a Solari coat. Black. Simple. The medallion at his throat. Leora stood beside him. She wore Solari ceremonial silver. Her hair was up, the small circlet of pale stones on her brow. She did not look like a princess. She looked like a queen. The Emperor stood on her other side. Empress Vela on the Emperor's other side. The four of them, on the high balcony, watching the plaza fill. The dispersal devices were already in place. Ivana had spent 3 days hiding them, inside the ceremonial incense towers that ringed the plaza, inside the fountains that ran through the crowd, inside the pillars at the great central platform. When the toxin came, the serum would come with it. Aerosolized, bonded to a fine, cool mist that would feel to the crowd like a sudden, gentle blessing on the back of the neck. That was the plan. The plan required Ethan's blood, all of it. Inside an extraction loop, connected by a long line of clear tubing to a series of small white pumps, hidden under his Solari coat, running silently against his skin. Ivana had set the timer. The extraction would begin at the moment the toxin sensors detected dispersal. It would take 3 minutes. He would have at the end of those 3 minutes no blood left in his body. He would have at the end of those 3 minutes saved a city. Ethan looked out at the crowd. He saw a man with a little girl on his shoulders. Brown hair. Solari with brown hair. He could not see her face. He thought, "Mr. Are you brown?" He smiled. Leora's hand found his under his coat sleeve. She squeezed. He squeezed back. The Emperor stepped forward to begin the ceremony. It happened during the 3rd song. The 3rd song was a hymn, an ancient one, older than the Empire itself. Something about a single light that holds in the long dark. Ethan did not understand the words. He understood the melody. He felt the hum start in his coat first, a small vibration against his sternum. Ivana's sensor. He looked at Leora. She had felt it too. Her eyes met his. He whispered, "It's starting." She did not speak. She raised his hand. She kissed his knuckles, quickly, fiercely, as if she could press all the words she had not said into the small bones of his fingers. She let him go. He stepped away from the railing. He walked down the long flight of crystal steps to the great central platform. The crowd parted as he came. They did not know what he was doing. They did not know what was happening, but they knew his face by now. The whole Empire knew his face. The little human who had saved the princess. The little human who had saved the children. The little human who would not stop. They watched him pass. A woman pressed her hand to her heart as he went by. A child reached out and brushed his sleeve. A soldier saluted. He climbed the central platform. He turned to face the plaza. 1,000,000 points of soft light looked up at him. He raised his arms. He drew a breath. He waited. Behind him, Ivana was hidden in a small alcove at the base of the platform. Her hands were on the pumps. Her eyes were on the toxin readout. The readout blinked. She whispered, "Now." She turned the dial. The pain hit before the cold did. The cold hit before the dispersal did. He felt the lines under his coat warm with his own blood. He felt the pumps begin. He felt his heart, which had been working very hard for 28 years, begin to work harder. Then the toxin came. He saw it, a faint shimmer in the air, like heat over a road. It came from the ceremonial incense towers. It came from the fountains. It came from the pillars of the platform itself. The crowd did not see it. They felt it first as a tickle in the throat. They felt it second as a faint sweetness on the tongue. The first man in the front row went to one knee. He looked surprised. He looked at his wife. His wife went to one knee beside him. She did not look surprised. She looked at her child. The child's eyes went wide. The plaza in the space of a single breath began to fall, like a wheat field in a wind. Row after row. The hymn cut off mid-note. Screaming began. Ethan stood on the platform with his arms raised, and the pumps draining him, and felt the toxin enter his own lungs and poured into his blood like a river meeting a sea. He had 3 minutes. He had 3 minutes to hold. He held. His body did the thing. He felt it in his bones first. A heat. A wild, deep heat. Not the slow heat of the gala. Not the steady heat of the children's blessing. This was different. This was every cell at once. Every organ at once. The full inheritance. The thing his mother had built in him over 30 sleepless nights when he was 8 years old. The thing the Solari poisons had spent 3 weeks teaching refining sharpening. His blood was not just blood anymore. His blood was the cure. It poured out of him through Ivana's lines, into the dispersal system, up into the cool, fine mist that Ivana had hidden in the same vents the toxin used. The mist rose. It spread. It fell on the crowd like a sudden, gentle blessing on the back of the neck. And the crowd that had been falling, the crowd that had been screaming, began to stand. A woman who had been on her knees blinked. She looked at her hand. The faint dark veins on the back of her wrist were retreating. A small boy who had been still in his father's arms drew a breath. A soldier who had been crawling toward his fallen captain pushed up onto his feet. Row by row, row by row, 1,000,000 people stood. 1,000,000 people looked toward the platform. 1,000,000 people saw on the central stage a small human in a black coat, with his arms still raised and his head beginning to bow. 1,000,000 people saw what saving them looked like. Leora was running. She had been running since the screaming started. She had taken the crystal steps 3 at a time. She had pushed past the Imperial Guard. She had pushed past her father, who reached for her arm and did not catch it. She had run. She reached the platform. Ivana was already there. Ivana's hands were on the pumps. Ivana's face was a mask. Ivana was counting under her breath. 2 minutes 10. 2 minutes 9. 2 minutes 8. Leora reached Ethan. He had begun to sway. She caught him before he fell. She lowered him to his knees. She did not stop the pumps. She did not pull the lines. She knew. She had agreed. She had promised. She knelt with him. She held him. She held him the way he had held her on the night of the gala. The full circle. The mirror. He looked at her. His eyes were unfocused. He whispered, "Did it work?" She nodded. Through her tears, she nodded. She said, "It worked, Ethan. They are standing. They are all standing." He smiled. He whispered, "Good." He whispered, "Tell Mom." She did not understand at first. Then she did. She said, "I will tell her, Ethan. I will tell her every day." He whispered, "Don't be cold." She bent her head over him. Her tears fell on his cheek. She said, "I won't be cold." He whispered, "Be kind." She said, "I will be kind." He whispered, "I love you." She said, "I love you. I love you. I love you." His eyes closed. Ivana said behind her, 1 minute 30. Leora pressed her forehead to his. She held him. She held him in a circle of silence in the middle of a plaza that was slowly beginning to weep with her. Then, something happened that no one in the plaza understood. Something that no one in the empire would understand for many days afterward. Something that Ivana Tessin, 600 years a physician, would write papers about for the rest of her life and still not entirely understand. It happened in his blood first. His cells, which had been pouring out the serum, did not run out. They began to make more. Faster. They began to make more than they were releasing. The lines in his arms began to refill behind the pumps. Ivana saw the readout. She blinked. She wiped it. She blinked again. She said, "What?" She said louder, "What?" Then she dropped her hand from the dial. She shouted, "Stop the pumps! Stop the pumps! Stop! Stop! Stop!" She slapped the kill switch. The lines stopped. She tore them out of his arm. She put her ear to his chest. She listened. She listened. She listened. She lifted her head. Her eyes were wide. She said, "His heart." Leora said, "What?" Ivana. "What?" Ivana said, His heart is beating stronger." She said it as if she did not believe it. She said it as if the words themselves might break. She said, His blood is rebuilding. He is not dying. He is. She pressed both hands over her mouth. She whispered, "He is evolving." In the small alcove, in the middle of a plaza of 1 million standing people, the princess of the Solari Empire knelt with the body of a young human in her arms, and the young human drew a breath, and the young human's heart did not stop, and the young human's eyes opened. His pupils were strange, larger than they should have been, ringed with a faint gold. He blinked. He said, "Leora." She said, "Ethan." He said, "Am I dead?" She laughed. It came out of her as a sob. She said, "No." She said, "No, you are not dead. You ridiculous, beautiful, stupid, wonderful man." He said, "Oh." She said, "Oh." He looked up. He looked at the sky over the plaza. the lavender sky. He said, "I think I'm going to need a minute." She held him in her arms. She did not let go for a long time. The Empire learned what had happened in fragments. Some of them learned it that night. Some of them not for weeks. The story would, over the following years, grow into something larger than itself. But the simple version was this. The toxin Ivana had thought would kill Ethan within a year was the same toxin that had taught his immune system its final lesson. The 2 doses he had absorbed before the festival, the poison from the gala, the aerosol from the children's blessing. These had not been wounds. They had been classrooms. His body had been a student. At the festival, faced with a 3rd dose vast enough to kill 400,000 Solari, his body had reached the end of its lesson. His body had graduated. It had begun to produce on its own a new kind of cell. A cell the universe had never seen. A cell that did not just neutralize Krelvek's venom. A cell that disassembled it, rebuilt it, turned its components into raw materials for repair of him, for repair of the crowd, for repair, potentially, of anyone Ivana could ever teach the dispersal system to reach. His blood was the cure. His blood was the cure for many things. Ivana Tessin, in the small clinic where she would spend the next 10 years studying him, would discover something else too. The long-term residue in his heart, and his liver, and his bones was gone. It had not killed him. It had taught him. It had left him healthier than he had been when he stepped off the transport ship 3 months ago. The ridiculous, impossible truth was that the same evolutionary inheritance that had let him survive a sickness at age 8 had given enough of an opponent decided to keep going. He was not dying. He was in some strange new way growing. The Vexari were the first to feel it, a long way away, in their black ships, in their hidden moons. A signal came back from a sleeper agent. The agent was not a person. The agent was a device that had been planted 3 months ago in the deep core network of Earth itself. The device's mission was simple. Once the Solari fell, once their imperial family was extinguished, once the larger empires were thrown into chaos by the death of their oldest ally, the device was to activate and release onto Earth the same Krelvek's toxin, in a quantity sufficient to remove the human species from the equation entirely, before they could grow into a problem. The Vexari plan had been beautiful in its simplicity. Step 1, kill the princess. Through Rylan, quietly. Step 2, failing that, kill the imperial family. At the festival. Step 3, kill the humans. In the ensuing chaos. The Vexari had spent 200 years on this plan. They had not accounted for one thing. The thing they had not accounted for. The thing they could not have accounted for was the small frequency of human DNA carried by a single 28-year-old man. The man's name was Ethan Hollis. The man's mother had been a nurse. The man's mother had sat by his bed for 30 nights when he was 8 years old. The man's body, having now learned the Krelvek's toxin, completely had begun, in the days following the festival, to shed something, into the air around him, into the systems around him, into, ultimately, the long, faint backwash of human signal that pulsed between Earth and the diplomatic stations. The shed material was harmless to humans. The shed material was harmless to Solari. The shed material reached the Vexari sleeper device 3 weeks later. And the device, which had been built, specifically, to respond to the chemical signature of one specific toxin, detected that toxin and shut down permanently. Earth would never know how close it had come. Earth would in fact spend the next 30 years patting itself on the back for the wisdom of its alliance with the Solari. Ethan, sitting on the same balcony where he had stood at the start of the festival 2 weeks afterward, with Leora's head on his shoulder, would learn the truth from a private communique sent by Ivana, and would not tell anyone for a very long time. He would simply close the report. He would look out at the plaza. He would whisper, "Mom." He would think I survived for a reason. I never knew what it was. He would think, now I do. Prince Rylan was tried in open court. He did not deny what he had done. He stood in the great chamber of justice, his hands bound in pale crystal, his head high, until it wasn't. The evidence was presented, the communications, the credit trails, the aerosol device, the names of the Vexari handlers, the plan for Earth. The chamber listened in silence. Lord Korath, sitting in the back row, did not look at him. Rylan was offered by ancient right the opportunity to speak. He spoke. He said, "I did this because I believed." He said, "I believed that our empire was diluting itself. I believed that an alliance with a young species was an insult to the bloodline. I believed that the princess, my princess, once mine, had been blinded by a sickness wearing the face of a man." He said, "I believed I was saving us." He looked for the first time at Leora. His face cracked. He said, "I was wrong." He said, "I was wrong about so much." He said, "I was a small man who confused his own wound with the wounds of his people. I called it duty. It was pride. It was jealousy. It was the sickness, not him." He bowed his head. He said, "I am sorry." He said, "There is no one in this universe who can give me what I do not deserve. But for what it is worth, in this last moment when I have nothing else to offer, I am sorry." The chamber waited. Leora stood. She had been seated beside her father. She stood. Slowly, she walked down the long aisle. She stopped in front of Rylan. She did not speak for a long time. Then she spoke quietly, just to him. She said, "Rylan." He looked up. She said, "You broke a thing in me." He did not answer. She said, "I was almost going to let that broken thing make me cold for the rest of my life." She said, "Somebody told me not to." He waited. She placed her hand on his shoulder. She said, "I forgive you." She said, "Not because you deserve it, because I deserve to be free of you." He closed his eyes. A tear slid down his cheek. She said, "I will not see you again." She said, "Live with what you did. That is your sentence." She turned. She walked back to her seat. The chamber breathed. Prince Rylan was sentenced to a long isolation, on a small moon, in a small cell. He would not be executed. The Empire, for many reasons, did not execute. He would live with what he had done. He would live a long time. He would, in his later years, write to children, to Solari children, about the dangers of believing that pride is duty. The writings would be read by many. He would never be redeemed, but he would eventually be useful. It was the best he could be. Ethan was confined to the Imperial Wing for many weeks afterward. Not as a prisoner, as a patient. Ivenna would not let him out of her sight. She drew his blood. She studied his tissue. She muttered to herself in a small language she had invented when she was a young apprentice and only used now, when the universe surprised her. She found new things every day. She would in time publish 147 papers on what she found. She would in time become the most cited physician in the history of 3 empires. She did not care about any of it. She cared about her patient. She brought him soup in the mornings. She bullied him into walking by noon. She read him reports in the afternoons. She would not allow him to be alone for more than an hour. She loved him. She would never have said the word. But she did. He understood. He loved her back. Emperor Soren came to see him in the 3rd week. He came alone. He did not look like an emperor. He looked like a father. He was wearing a simple gray robe. His beard had been trimmed. His massive shoulders were not somehow as massive as they had once seemed. He sat in the chair beside Ethan's bed. He did not speak for a long time. Then he said, "Ambassador Hollis." Ethan said, "Your Majesty." The Emperor said, "I did not for the first several weeks of your presence in my court take you seriously." Ethan said, "I noticed." The Emperor smiled. It was a small, tired, true smile. He said, "I have had time to consider this, to consider many things. I have ruled this empire for 211 of your years. I have made many decisions. I have been right about most of them. I have been wrong about a few." He said, "I was wrong about you." Ethan did not speak. The Emperor reached into his robe. He took out a small folded paper. He set it on the bed. He said, "This is a list of every decision I have made about humans in the last 40 years. I am asking you to read it, and to tell me which of them were wrong, and I will undo as many of them as I can." Ethan stared. He said, "Your Majesty." The Emperor said, "No, listen." The Emperor said, "I almost lost my daughter, twice, in one lifetime. I have already lost one daughter. I do not have the heart anymore for being wrong about people who turn out to be worth more than I knew." He said, "Read it. Mark the lines. Send it back to me. That is all I ask." He stood. He paused. He turned at the door. He said, "Also." Ethan said, "Yes, Your Majesty." The Emperor said, "My daughter has told me that you proposed to her." Ethan flushed. He said, "Conditionally." The Emperor said, "She wishes to accept." He said, "I wish you to know that I approve." He said, "I wish you to know that my wife approves." He said, "I wish you to know that if my mother were still alive, she would also approve." He held Ethan's eyes for a long moment. He said, "Welcome to our family, my son." He closed the door very softly behind him. Ethan sat in the white sheets and pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes, and laughed, and cried, and laughed. The wedding was small. That was the agreement. Lyora had insisted. Ethan had insisted. The Empress had agreed. The emperor had grumbled, but agreed. There were no political dignitaries. There were no broadcasts. There were no 1,000 noble galas. There was a garden. The garden was the same one where Ethan had first stumbled onto Leora, talking to a flower. The branches like glass, the mercury stream, the dome of lavender sky. There were 12 chairs. The Empress sat in one, 6 eyes streaming, a handkerchief in her lap that had belonged to her own mother and her mother's mother, and which she did not today even pretend to keep dry. The Emperor sat beside her, holding her hand, his face composed, his knuckles white. Ivenna Tessin sat behind them, in a clean white robe, her silver hair for the first time in months brushed. Commander Draxon stood at the back. He had refused a chair. He stood at attention. He did not move once for the entire ceremony. There was no priest. In the Solari tradition. There did not need to be. In the Solari tradition. The vow was the priest. Ethan stood under an arch of white flowers. He was wearing a simple suit, dark blue, the color of the night sky just before the stars come out. The medallion at his throat. He waited. Leora came down the path. She was wearing white. Not Solari white. Earth white. She had asked Ivenna how Earth brides dressed. She had had a gown made. Long. Simple. A single trailing veil. She held her father's arm. The Emperor walked her down the garden path with the slow, careful pride of a man, giving away the most precious thing in his life to the only man in any universe he trusted with it. He stopped under the arch. He placed his daughter's hand in Ethan's. He said in a voice that did not shake, "Take care of her." Ethan said, "I will, until I am dust." The Emperor stepped back. He stood beside his wife. He cried. He cried openly. The Emperor of the Solari Empire. The Mountain. The Thunderhead. He cried. His wife laid her head on his shoulder. Ethan and Leora turned to each other. She looked at him. He looked at her. He did not have the words. He had never had the words. He said the only thing he had. He said, "Hi." She laughed. Wet. Bright. She said, "Hi." He said, "You came." She said, "I came." He said, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve this." She said, "Then take your time." The Solari vow was simple. There were no rings. There were 2 hands. He placed his right hand on her heart. She placed her right hand on his heart. They did not say anything for a long time. They did not need to. When they finally spoke, they spoke together. They said, "I see you." That was all. That was everything. The garden filled with the soft sound of the Empress weeping. The Emperor weeping. Ivenna laughing through tears. Draxon very quietly putting one massive blue hand to his face. Ethan leaned forward. He kissed his wife. She set him back. The arch of flowers above them in some Solari way no one fully understood began to glow. That evening, Ethan and Leora stood at the window of the Imperial Wing. The 2 moons of the Solari Empire were rising. Together, the pale one and the pink one. climbing the dark sky in their slow, patient circle. Leora stood with her back to Ethan's chest. His arms were around her waist. Her hands were laid over his hands. They had been quiet for a long time. Then she took one of his hands. She moved it. She placed it, flat, palm down, just below her navel. She said, "Ethan." He said, "Yeah." She said, "I have something to tell you." He went very still. She said, "Ivana confirmed it this morning." His mouth opened, closed, opened. He said, "Leora." She said, "Yes." He said, "Liora." She said, "Yes, Ethan." He said, "Are you?" She said, "Yes." He turned her around, carefully, the way a man turns the most precious thing in his life. His hands were shaking. He cupped her face. He searched her eyes. She said, "She is healthy. Ivana says she is healthy. Half Solari, half human. The first of her kind in the history of the universe." His mouth worked. No sound came out. She said very gently, "She will be loved, Ethan. She will be loved every minute of her life." He nodded. He could not speak. He pressed his forehead to hers. He breathed. He thought of his mother. He thought of the headstone in the cemetery at the edge of a city that no longer remembered its dead. The 3 carved words: Margaret Hollis. Nurse. He thought mom. He thought you were going to be a grandmother. He took the medallion off. He took it off slowly. He held it in his palm, the brass that had been worn smooth by 12 years of being held too tight. He turned it over. Healing hands are a gift, not a burden. He took Leora's hand. He placed the medallion in her palm. He closed her fingers around it. He said, "Tell her this when she's old enough to ask." Leora's eyes filled. She said, "I will." He said, "Tell her her grandmother said it first." Leora said, "I will, Ethan." He said, "Tell her." His voice broke. He took a breath. He said, "Tell her her grandmother stayed up 30 nights for me when I was sick, so that one day I could be here. To make her." Leora pressed the medallion to her own chest. She said, "I will tell her every word." He pulled her in. He held her. He held her with the careful, steady strength of a man who had in one impossible season stopped being alone. Beyond the window, somewhere very small and very far away, a small, green-blue planet turned slowly in its quiet corner of the sky. The little planet did not know it had been saved. The little planet did not know it had sent its most ordinary sun into the dark, and that he had come home in a way by not coming home at all. The little planet kept turning, and in a garden at the heart of an old empire, in a high window over a sleeping city, a young man and a young woman who had each spent a long time being lonely held each other. And the medallion, worn smooth by 12 years of one man's grief, lay against the chest of a woman who would in 7 months give it to a daughter, and the daughter would one day give it to a daughter of her own. And the words, the simple, true, ordinary words that a nurse had pressed into her teenage son's hand on the night before she went into the red zone. The words would outlive them all. Healing hands are a gift, not a burden. in a universe that had thought itself ancient, and found out one autumn that it had been young all along. The words were enough.